Hey folks, welcome back to this chapter, Bevel Basics. So bevels are one of the most essential tools in 3D modeling and their importance cannot be overstated. In the real world, no edge is ever perfectly sharp. There is always a slight rounding or chamfer that catches the light and adds realism. So you can see here we have two different cubes, one without the bevels and one with the bevels, and you can see how appealing this is looking. So yeah, bevels allows us to replicate this effect in our models, like softening the sharp edges and making them look more natural and visually appealing. Without bevels, objects appear to be geometrically perfect and artificial. Adding bevels not only improves the look of an object, it also enhances the behavior of lighting as well. So you can see here how geometrically perfect these edges and how sharp the transition is. If I switch to the render preview with the basic HDRI, you can see that a lot better. You can see here how how these edges are getting dissolved because they are geometrically perfect. But then you can see here with these edges, you can see how the edges is a lot more prominent and it is actually defining the shape a lot better. So bevels play a key role in defining the shapes and making it look a lot more natural and visually appealing. So bevels also play a key role in maintaining clean topology. It also helps us adding supportive edge loops while adding subdivision surfaces. This guides the smoothing process, ensuring the edges retain the shape. For instance, we have this cube without the bevels or the supportive edge loops. If I add a subdivision surface by Control 2, you can see it is getting rounded off. Now with this, you can see it is still retaining the shape even after applying a subdivision modifier. So yeah, you can also control the amount and you can also control the smoothness with the bevel modifier over here. So in this chapter, we will explore how to effectively use the bevel modifier to enhance your workflow and solve some common issues and make your models look polished and look a lot more realistic. So yeah, let's get started. So let's explore the settings now. So I'm going to grab this here. Let's select this one and let's just move this to the center. So let's start with width type. We will use offset for all the objects in our scene, and everything else is again going to function a little bit different, but then they actually define a little different type of beveling method. So we will use offset for our entire course, so let's not worry about this. Okay, and also we have set the bevel mode to edges just like default. We can also bevel vertices. I will come to that later. Okay, now let's talk about the amount here. So the amount represents the size of the bevel. So for now, it is set to 0.01 to add some really sharp supportive edge loops. So I'm going to press Shift Z to enter the X-ray view so that you can see the bevels here. You can see, so this is the amount of bevel, 0.01. So upon increasing it, it is going to space out and make the object, make the bevels a lot more bigger. So the amount represents the size of the bevels. Now you can see this is a lot more rounder. Okay, and also you can't actually set the amount like really high. So after some point, it is going to get clamped in the middle. For instance, here you can see that. So upon increasing it, it is going to meet. The bevels are going to meet at some point. So you can see at 0.987 it is the edges from the top and bottom, they are going to meet there, and therefore it is going to get clamped, and therefore we will get this type of effect here. You can see, so this so this faceting here, this means like we have a couple of edges overlapping in this area, so therefore we get this type of effect. In case you don't want your object to be clamped, you don't want the bevel modifier to clamp these edges, you can go down here to the geometry. You can find this option here called clamp overlap. You can go ahead and disable it, and therefore this will allow you to move the edges above this boundary. And I don't really have any idea about why we want to disable the clamp. We always have the clamp overlap over here. So okay, so that's there. Now I'm going to set this back to 0.05. Okay, so yeah, this is looking good. Now the segments here, this determines the amount of edges that is building up the bevels. So upon increasing it, it is going to increase the segments, and usually we will set the segment to 2 in our course, and we will add a subdivision on top of this to have really nice and smooth look. And in case if you are not using subdivision on top of this to make this lot more nice and smooth, you can probably set the segments to something like 3 or 4. That will give you this type of polished look over here. Okay, yeah, that's there. Okay, now let's talk about the limit method, which is a really important feature in the bevel modifier. So the limit method determines what are all the edges getting beveled. So right now this is set to angle, which is also the default bevel mode. You can see down here the angle value here. So any edge that falls under the angle 30 threshold is going to get beveled. So for instance, let's say we have an edge here. So I'm going to go to the side view. So let me just switch the 3D cursor, shift Y. Okay, this is going to bring down now perfectly. Okay, so we are essentially reducing the angle here, and after some point you can see we have a slight change. So I'm gonna move in a little closer. Okay, yes, shift Y. I'm gonna get it down. You can find after some point you can see here bevel modifier is actually ignoring this edge. So I'm gonna enter the X-ray view. You can see that. So yeah, I'm gonna scale it up one more time. Yeah, you can see now. So this is where the edge is actually going below the threshold of angle 30 degrees. Now let's say this is somewhere around 25 to 30 degrees. If I bring down the angle, you can see. So this is somewhere between 28 to 30 degrees. Now you can see after decreasing the angle, it is actually beveling this one. So any edge that falls under the threshold of the mentioned angle over here is going to get beveled. Okay. Now let's go back a little bit. Now let's explore the second method, which is none. Setting this to none means the bevel modifier doesn't have any type of restrictions when it comes to the limit method. It is going to bevel all the available edges in an object. At first sight, it is going to behave just like the angle limit method. We see no visual changes between both of these methods. But see what happens when I add a loop cut in the middle. So I'm going to enter the X-ray view and add a loop cut in the middle. Let's confirm it. Okay, so when the limit method is set to none, it is going to bevel this edge as well. But this is not the case when it is set to angle, because this edge has an angle value of 0 because this is completely flat. So when it's set to none, it is going to bevel all the edges available in the mesh, and therefore it has a lot of chance that it is going to bevel some edges that we don't actually want to get beveled. Let's say we have a cylinder. I'm going to bring in a cylinder here, and let's just move this out. I'm gonna copy the modifier from this one, Control L, copy modifiers. Okay, I'm gonna shade this smooth. When it is set to angle, this is actually beveling only the angle that falls in the threshold of 30 degrees. But then when it is set to none, it is going to bevel all the available edges in the cylinder, and therefore we will lose this type of smooth effect on our mesh because of this newly created geometry. So you gotta have to use it carefully, because the limit method none produce some unnecessary bevelings. So you can actually use it on very simple meshes, but then when the complexity of the mesh increases, it is going to be a little bit problematic, and you're gonna have to rely on the other limit methods. Yeah, that's there. Now let's move on to the next one, which is weight. Okay, I'm gonna grab this here, Control X. You can see upon setting this to weight, the bevel modifier is not working anymore, and that is because we gotta have to define weights for these edges, and that's how bevel modifier knows what are all the edges it needs to bevel. Okay, so you can do that by grabbing any of the edge and bring in the side panel, go to item, and under the edge data you can see the option called bevel weight. You can increase it all the way to 1, and therefore bevel modifier will recognize that particular edge, and therefore it will bevel it. If you select everything and increase the mean bevel weight all the way to 1, then it is going to bevel all the edges in the object, or all the edges that has this bevel weight. Now also the mean bevel weight over here, it also determines the size of the bevel amount as well. So let's say we have something like really big bevel so that we can see it a lot better. Okay, now see what happens when I decrease the bevel weight over here. So this is going to restrict the amount of weight, and therefore it also restricts the amount of bevel as well. So this is like 0.18 means like a 18% of 0.24, and this is 100% of 0.24. So this is how the bevel weight works, and the in terms of bevel amount. And the crease here, it's a different topic. This actually works in combination with a subsurface modifier. So we will see about this in the next chapter. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna grab everything. Let's reduce the mean bevel weight all the way to 0. Now let's set this to vertex group. So again, this is a really interesting one here. So when it is set to vertex group, we gotta have to specify a certain vertex group in order to bevel modifier to work properly, or else it is going to again bevel all the available edges in your object. For instance, let's say we have something like this right now. If I add an edge over here, so this is also gonna get beveled because of this vertex group. So yeah, now let's see how we can assign a vertex group. Okay, I'm gonna go back a little bit. Let's reduce the bevel amount. Let's set this back to 0.05. Okay, now I'm going to grab this edge over here. Let's go to the object data properties, this green icon, and let's hit the plus button to create a new vertex group, and I'm gonna rename this to bevel, just so we know, and hit assign to assign this edge in the bevel over here. So essentially, we are actually assigning the vertices because vertices, a vertex is the first and foremost component that is needed to build the geometry. So let's duplicate this edge and move this out here. So this is the edge, but what this edge is made up of is a couple of vertices over here and here. So essentially, we are grabbing these two vertices and assigning them to the vertex group. So that's why the name vertex group, not edge group. Okay. So we are essentially assigning these vertices. So this is really important to know. So I will show you why shortly. Okay. So I'm going to delete this one. Okay. Now let's go to the bevel modifier and let's specify the vertex group through this option here. So now you can see here, only this edge is actually getting beveled because we have assigned these vertices in the vertex group over here. Let's say let's assign this two guys here. I'm gonna grab these and hit assign. Now you can see, instead of you might have expected these only this side to get beveled, but then you can see everything else is getting beveled, and that is because, as I told you before, vertices is what matters here, not the edges. So these two vertices makes this edge, and these two vertices make this edge, and therefore these two vertices make this edge, and these two vertices make this edge, and therefore it's a little bit of a complex thing, but then it works a little similar to the weight as well. So yeah, that's how the vertex group works. So we will not be relying on the vertex group because it's quite a troublesome way to apply bevels. So the three we will actually use these three most of the cases. So for most cases we will use angle, and the second mostly we will use the weight, and lastly the none, and we will not use the vertex group type of bevel over here. Okay, so yeah, that's there. Now I'm gonna go back a little bit. Let's switch this back to angle and set the bevel amount back to 0.505. Okay, we are good here. Okay, that's all about the limit method. Now let's talk about the bevel profile. So by default, this is gonna set to super ellipse, and the shape is set to 0.5. So when the shape is set to 0.5, we are gonna have this type of really nice and round bevels, and when it's set to 1, this is gonna be a lot more sharper. And now this is behaving more like a supportive edge loop rather than a bevel. So a bevel is something that has rounded edges, this chamfered shape. But then when it is a supportive edge loop, so this is gonna not contribute to rounding of these edges, and rather this is gonna contribute to contain the shading and contain the subdivision in case if you are doing subdemodeling. Now if I turn off the bevel modifier, you're gonna find that the shading is falling apart because we don't actually have any supportive edge loop that is containing the shading here. And you can see upon turning it on, it is going to contain the shading. And the next use case is adding subdivision modifier without actually losing the original form of this cube. So I'm going to duplicate this cube and move this out in the x-axis and delete the bevel modifier from that one. And I'm going to grab both of these guys, and I'm going to press Ctrl 2 to add two levels of subdivisions. Now you can see we have this supportive edge loops, which is actually preventing the subdivision from rounding of this entire cube. Rather, this has a lot more refined finish now, but then we don't actually have any supportive edge loops in here, and therefore it is actually rounded off and looking like a sphere now. And to fix this, you can actually add a bevel modifier. In case if you want to do it the manual method, you're gonna have to add some subdivisions by pressing Ctrl R, adding some loop cuts, and then you can grab all of these guys and press Ctrl V and bevel them until your desired amount of sharpness, and therefore we will have similar results. This is like a manual method and destructive way of doing this, and this is not destructive. We can control the bevel amount intuitively with this method. So this is how the bevel profile functions here. Okay, so we are clear on two of these shapes. When it is set to 0.5, this is going to have nice and round bevels. When it is set to 1, this is going to give us the supportive edge loops. And we can also bring it below the value of 0.5, which means this is going to give us the negative effect, which means this is going to produce the reverse bevel. So the perfect value for a reverse bevel is 0.05 in case if you have any use case for it. And in case if you are, completely bringing it down, this is going to produce the reverse effect of the supportive edge loops right here. When I enter the X-ray view, now you can see. So this is how the profile functions. Okay. Now let's talk about the custom profiles, which provides us with this graph editor over here, and we can actually use this graph editor to control the shape of the bevel. Okay, and we have some presets over here, so let's go them one by one. So this is default, which is like a straight simple chamfering. I'm going to enter the X-ray view. You can see here. So this is nothing but setting the bevel segment to 2. I'm going to show you that as well. Okay, setting the segment to 1. Yeah, this is going to give this flat chamfering, and this is what we are actually getting in here as well. Okay, by default. I'm going to set this to 4 once again. You can see we have this extra geometry, but then the shape of the bevel remains the same. So the default means it's similar to the segment set to 1, but with the extra geometry in middle of these faces. Okay. Yeah, now let's explore the second preset, which is supportive edge loops. So this is going to, just like what I told you, it is going to create some supportive edge loops. If you enter the, if you add a subdivision, you're going to find that here. Okay, so yeah, now let's move on to the next one, which is Cronus molding. So this is a pretty sophisticated bevel profile, and to see this profile in full effect, we gotta have to increase the segment count because this requires quite a bit of geometry in order to create this shape over here. But then you can see we have slight, dent and curvature in the shape of the bevel. So I'm going to set this to super high segments so that we can have a good look at it. So I'm going to set this to 30. Now you can see the full effect of this Cronus molding here. So yeah, we can use this to create crown molding near our ceiling. We can use this Cronus molding to create ornamental chairs, windows, furniture, whatever you want it to be. So this is a pretty great stuff. You can also increase the amount to see it a lot better. And we have one more thing, which is crown molding, which again we can also use for crown molding furniture, chairs, whatever you want it to be. And yeah, we have steps finally, which is nothing but it's just like how it sounds. This is going to create steps, but then you gotta have to find a good amount of segments in order to create perfect looking steps. So again, this is gonna get into the high poly stuffs. So yeah, that's there. And you can also set this preset to default, and then you can add some points on your own, create your own profile as well. And yeah, we are not only limited to the defaults and presets, we can create our own profiles. You can search for crown molding profiles, and then you can use that as a reference to create and manipulate the curves in order to create your desired looking bevel profiles. Okay, so that's there. Now these guys here, so this I'm gonna explore a couple of these. So this one is set to auto handle, which means this is going to have this type of Bezier curve type of look. And upon setting this to vector, this is gonna be like really sharp transition objects. So you can combine both of these auto and vector in order to produce your desired looking handles once again. So just like what we have here in the Cronus molding, you can see. So these top 3 points here, so they can be they are set to vector, and these guys they are set to auto. So yeah, you can actually use these guys, and we also have this type of Bezier curve looking stuffs. So yeah, so that's there, and I suggest you to explore these guys. And okay, I'm gonna set this back to super ellipse, Now let's talk about the meter here. Okay, yeah, here it is. So yeah, the meter inner, it actually affects the corners over here. You can see upon setting this to on, this is going to affect the shape of the bevel in the corners. You can adjust the spread here. Yeah, so this is a pretty advanced stuff. You don't really be using this one, but then we actually use the meter outer here. We will actually use this one. So but then we gotta need a different looking geometry in order to explain that one. Now you can see this option here. So the meter outer means it is going to actually affect the concave shapes, and the meter inner affects the convex shapes like this. Okay, so the meter outer here, we can see upon setting this to arch, this is going to create this type of arch like structures, and upon setting the meter inner to arc, it is going to affect these areas here. So yeah, we won't be actually using this meter inner though. That's hardly ever used in my workflow, at least. We will actually use the meter outer here. Meter, I don't really know how to pronounce that. And we also have this patch as well. So yeah, that's there. And the intersections here. So this is by default set to grid fill. You can also choose a cutoff. This is going to cut this off like this. So yeah, again, one of the features you can experiment with it. So yeah, we will use the grid fill for most cases because that gives us really good geometry. We already explored the clamp overlap and the loop slide here. So this is again pretty interesting stuff. Okay, now let's talk about the loop slide here. So this is, this comes in a pretty intermediate and advanced stage of modeling. So this usually won't be, needed with this type of very simple looking objects. So I gotta have to bring in another object to demonstrate this one a little better. And also we won't really be using this option when it is, inside the bevel modifier. We will be, using this when we do some manual bevelings. So I'm gonna show you how to do that as well. So I'm going to press Ctrl V here. So let's bring in this bowl. Now we are going to use this bowl to demonstrate the loop slide one. Okay, now I'm going to grab this. Let's enter the local space and tab into edit mode. So we have this edges here. So let's just grab all these guys. And I'm going to bevel this one by pressing Ctrl B. Okay, so you can notice here, this edges is kind of a little slanting. It is kind of, almost flowing in the direction of this edge flow that this object has right here. But then see what happens when I uncheck the loop slide. It is going to be like pretty straight. Okay, so the loop slide essentially means it is going to slide with the edge flow of the object, and without the loop slide, it is going to bevel pretty crudely. How it naturally bevels without actually taking the account of the edge flow of this object. This is pretty advanced stuff, and we will actually use this option in our course. So yeah, so that's there. I hope you get the idea. So loop slide means it is going to slide with the flow of the edge flow of the geometry. Without the loop slide, the bevel is going to bevel naturally without actually taking the edge flow of the object into account. So yeah, that's there. Now I'm going to delete this one. We don't need this anymore. Probably we can hide this from the viewport. Okay, another important thing, another shading here is this hardened normals. So I'm going to grab this here and I'm going to copy the modifier from this one. Okay, yeah, you can see I'm not really sure if you can notice here, but then we have a slight shading issue here. We can actually see this a lot better without the these many segments in the bevel modifier. So I'm going to set this back to something like 2. You can notice there is a little bit of a shift in the shading. You can notice this a lot better, okay, over here. So in the top area, you can see the front area here is a little bit brighter, and as it goes to the back, it is getting a lot darker. So we can actually enable the hardened normals over here to fix that issue over here. You can see upon enabling the hardened normals, it is going to put some weight on the normals of the faces of this cube, and therefore it will make this a lot more nice and smooth, and it will fix the shading issue. So this will make this object look a lot more solid than something hollow looking piece of mesh. Okay, and let's not worry about the seams and shafts. We don't really be needing these guys. Also the material index as well. And in case if your material is behaving a little bit weird, you can try switching the material index to 1 or 0. So yeah, that might work. And let's not worry about the face trend. We won't be needing this, guys. Okay. So yeah, these are the really important settings in the bevel modifier. Now I'm gonna delete the bevel modifier, enter the edit mode, and now let's see how we can manually do all these stuffs without actually relying on the bevel modifier. So once again, to bevel a edge, you can select any edge you want to bevel and press Ctrl B, and you can bevel this, and you can scroll your mouse to add how many segments you want it to be. And if you're not sure about the shape and the bevel segment, you can simply bevel it however it is looking, and then you have access to this operator panel, and you can adjust the width, the segments, and the shape here. So just like what we saw with the bevel modifier, we have all these options over here. We have the harder normals, and yeah, the harder normals, upon placing this in the edit mode, this is going to add these sharps, this blue lines here. This is what we call sharp here. So this is going to fix our shading issue here. Okay, I will also show you how the sharp works as well. Yeah, and we also have this clamp overlap here. So upon enabling it, this will get clamped in the middle. Yeah, upon disabling it, it is gonna bevel it however it is going to get like. So yeah, make sure to enable the clamp. And you can also, without actually, like relying on the clamp over here, you can also press C while beveling it, and this will also allow you to clamp while beveling it. Okay, in case if it was turned off. And again, we saw what the loop slide means, and we also have this intersection type here, which is the same as what we saw in the bevel modifier. And we also have this profile type here, which is again the same as what we saw in the bevel modifier. And yeah, I'm gonna go back a little bit, and I'm gonna give this a bevel here. Let's uncheck the harder normals. Okay, now let's set the profile type to custom, and we have this presets here, and set this to Cronus molding, and you can increase the segments here to see the effect of it. So you can see multiple shading issues happening here, and also the overall shading of the object as well. You can grab any edge or any face that has this type of shading issue, and you can simply right click and choose. Okay, make sure that you are in the edge mode by pressing 2 on your keyboard, and right click and mark sharp, and this will sharpen these edges and therefore fix the shading issue. Okay, we don't need this in here. Now clear sharp here, and grab this and mark sharp there. Yeah, and therefore the edges will look nice and sharp. This also works, even with the bevel modifier as well. So let's say we have this here. I'm going to grab this, right click, mark sharp. So this is going to mark this edges as sharp. You can see the effect here. In case if you are experiencing any shading issues, you can try marking sharp. Okay. So the only issue with the manual beveling is this is pretty destructive. So this is not changeable, but then we have this bevel modifier here, so we can adjust the amount however we want it to be. We can increase the segments, and all these settings here, they are non-destructive, and this is destructive. So you're gonna have to be pretty sure about your decisions in order to make some manual bevels. But then we have some issues with the bevel modifier as well. We can't really use different type of bevel amounts in a bevel modifier. Of course we can do that, but then I'm talking about some extreme cases. So let's just go back a little bit. Okay, so we have this here, so I'm gonna copy the modifier from this one, and we have some 10. Okay, I'm gonna set this to 4. Okay, and let's check harder normals, and let's say we want some different bevel amounts in this object. So we can probably grab one of the edge here, add some bevel weight to it, add a new bevel modifier, and move it above this one, and set the limit method to weight. And then you can see this edge here, this is getting a different bevel amount. So the weighted bevel modifier always comes above this one. So yeah, it works that way. So in that way, we are actually, you can see here, when this bevel weighted bevel is under this normal one, you can see that this is actually beveling the already beveled edges. So you're gonna have to make sure that this is above this one, and therefore it is going to first of all bevel this edge, and therefore this beveled edge, this is going to fall under the angle of 30 degrees, and therefore this bevel modifier will ignore this edge and this will get a different bevel. So this is how it works. You can increase the segments and increase the amount, control it however you want it to be until it is going to overlap there. You can set however you want it to be. And the only issue here is when you try to add a lookup over here, and let's say we can I'm gonna try to give this a really sharp detail over here. So let's say I'm gonna set this to super ellipse, and I'm going to press Alt E and extrude faces along normals. You're gonna find that these really sharp bevels here, these are actually restricting this bevel modifier from from reaching its true potential of 0.05 meters. So before this, okay, you can see this this has a really bigger looking bevels, and upon adding a new loop cut and creating a really sharp bevel, it is actually going to affect the overall bevels, and therefore it is going to look a lot sharper. When this edges here, they are pretty close, and therefore they come to a overlap pretty quickly. So when it comes to a overlap, it is going to restrict the bevel modifier from reaching its true potential. So yeah, this is the problem with the bevel modifier. So this is not actually a case with the manual bevels though. So you can simply delete all these guys. So we have a really sharp bevels here, right? And you can go ahead and grab all these guys. So when it comes to manual bevels, you gotta have to be pretty sure about your bevels, and then you can do the this is like the final changes when it comes to manual editing. You can simply grab all the edges you need and then press Ctrl B. You can bevel it however you want it to be, how bigger you want it to be. Now you can enable the loop slide here. So this will fix this issue. So you can see enabling the loop slide means it is going to follow the edge flow of the object, and therefore we can avoid this type of issue. So this is pretty prevalent now. So yeah, now you can simply grab these guys here, and then you can simply give this however small bevel you want it to be, and this won't actually affect the rest of the bevels in our object. So with manual beveling, it is pretty destructive, but then you have absolute control over the geometry. And when it comes to bevels using modifier, it is going to have some limitations, but then it also has some advantages as well. It is non-destructive, so you're going to have to pick your poison here. In some cases we will rely on manual bevels, and in some cases we will rely on modified bevels. So yeah, so far we have only seen how to bevel the edges. Now let's talk about the vertices. So let's go ahead and switch the bevel modifier to vertices, and this is going to function in a similar fashion. Instead of beveling the edges, it is going to bevel the vertices. Okay, so I'm going to shade this flat so that you can see it a lot better. Now you can see here closer, the vertices are getting beveled. I'm going to set the segment to 1 so that this is nice and flat, and I'm going to increase the amount here so that we can see it a lot better. Okay, it again works in a similar fashion. Increasing the amount will increase the size of the bevel and the segments as well. We also have the profile shape, which again works in a similar fashion. Increasing the amount to 1 will create this type of structure, while bringing it down will create this type of concave shape over here. And under the shading, we also have the hard normals option as well. So in case if you want that, that is there. Okay, so yeah, when it comes to vertices, this is a very simple topic. Now I'm going to also show you how to manually bevel the vertices as well. So I'm going to grab one of these guys and press Ctrl Shift B. This is the shortcut for beveling a vertex. I'm going to bevel this now. I'm going to scroll it down. Okay, now you can see this is working a little different. Okay, so now we have 3 vertices over here, and that's why it is actually getting beveled 3 times. Okay, now the rest of these guys are working in a similar function. So we won't really be using this beveling vertices so much in our course. I mean, I think we hardly ever use this, but then in case if we were using it, that will be like in the manual mode. We won't really be using a bevel modifier to bevel the vertices. Okay folks, that's all about bevel modifier, manual bevels, and beveling in general. So these topics that we have discussed right now, this is not only restricted to Blender. Beveling and subdivision is usually a universal thing across different software packages. So I hope you get the idea of how beveling works and how to handle them. So yeah, let's wrap up this chapter right here, and I'll see you on the next one.